Hello and welcome. I'm Melanie Hayden of the Healing Cocoon, and I will be your host for this interview with my guest, Dr. Natasha Iyer. Dr. Iyer is a functional medicine doctor, along with being the medical director at Better, a center for complete living, and she has a side gig as an emergency room doctor. As well as being a busy doctor, she has a family at home with her husband, children, and 2 dogs. Just before we get started, I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of my background as well. I've been practicing massage therapy for over 25 years, and my practice has always been focused on whole health and wellness, providing my clients with resources to support and maintain their health and well-being far beyond the massage room. I've created and hosted professional conferences, local retreats with speakers on health and wellness, and have over 13 years of experience bringing educators and students together into the virtual classroom as a founder of the World Massage Conference. I'm merging my technical skills and passion for sharing wellness resources by interviewing some experts and professionals who have a lot of experience in supporting strong relationships and healthy lifestyles. Welcome, Dr. Iyer, to the Healing Cocoon video podcast room. It's fabulous to have you here.
Thank you, Melanie.
So let's start by just learning a little bit about what is a functional medicine doctor.
I'll say I'm a doctor in recovery then. So the first part of, I've been a doctor for 25 years now, so similar length of time as you, but my first 12 years was spent, purely in the traditional allopathic medical model. And as much as all I've ever wanted to do was be a doctor, I became very frustrated with running out of answers. There were many, many patients, including myself, where there were no answers. Our tests were always normal, and yet we didn't feel good. I'm quite sure you see and hear that all the time with your clients as well. It's I have no energy, what's going on? My got up and went without me. I'm gaining weight regardless of exercise and diet. I tease my patients and say I started in functional medicine because I was effed. I was fatigued, fat, frazzled, foggy, forgetful, and then fed up and frustrated that there were no answers in the medical model for me. I had 15 migraines a month. I could barely function. I looked in the mirror. I looked 15 to 20 years older than I was. I felt that much older than I was. And yet my tests were all normal. And so through a patient of mine, very interestingly, I discovered this whole world of natural medicine. And I have to admit that prior to that, I thought naturopathic medicine was a total kooky thing because I didn't know anything about it. I'd never heard of chiropractic before. I hadn't come across acupuncture or anything. The best I knew was massage. And even at that time, my medical colleagues, many of them wouldn't write prescriptions to recommend massage because it wasn't a validated therapy that they learned about in med school. And I'm sure you experienced all of that, right? And so my own health dictated I find a new way. And through multiple readings and then courses, I stumbled across, at that time it was called anti-aging medicine. And it's a model of looking at actual health, not waiting to be sick and then trying to fix it. It was sort of, how do we restore health, true health? And what does that model look like? And so in functional medicine, it's a model of looking at a being from the body, mind, and spirit to your physical body. And I teach my patients about the nutritional, biochemical, and hormonal body and how they all interact. And then there's no beginning and ending though, because in functional medicine, we're looking at putting your body back to its best function. And that will include everything from your gut function to your liver function, to the type of food you eat, to what nutrients you supplement. It would look at trauma, it would look at stress, it would look at your stress management, your view of life and who you are as a person, and then customizing a program based on not only those things, but many other things as well. I think if you think about it, it's sort of, if you had a headache, as a regular doctor, I would have given you pills. As a functional medicine doctor, I would say the headache is a symptom of something else that's wrong. So is it musculoskeletal? Is it nutritional? Is it food sensitivities? Now, these are not allergies, but food sensitivity. So if you're in my world of functional medicine, you've heard of leaky gut and food sensitivities, which are different from food allergies. You know, we would look at it. We would go, how much of stress is there? Is there a cellular emotional component, some pain and trauma component? Is there a physical component that, you know, massage and chiropractic and acupuncture could help? Is there a nutritional component? For example, magnesium deficiency is a common cause of headaches. And so, you know, for me, if you came to me with a headache, you don't leave with a prescription. An hour later, we're still finding out all the different things about you that we need to look at to fix the root cause so the headaches go away, as opposed to treating the symptom, which never corrects the cause of the headache, if that makes sense.
Right, that totally makes sense. So that's a much broader and deeper dive, as you said, into all aspects, which is what we are made of. We are made of all aspects of our past and of our current and of lifestyle and everything. So I love the opportunity for functional medicine to be broader and more available. So I really appreciate that you've gone down this path, and it's so many times, as you said, our own health and well-being leads us down that path, and it allows us to really relate to the people that we're working with, like for you to relate to your patients. So,
you know, if I hadn't had severe anxiety that destroyed much of my life and relationships, severe hormonal imbalance, which I would say destroyed more of my life and my relationships, and if I hadn't had that extreme fatigue and the headaches, you just don't have an understand, like you can hear it, but you can't feel it for the patient, if you know what I mean. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else or anything, but I really feel like if I hadn't lived with anxiety, I couldn't relate as well. So you're right. Like I think, if you know, it's sad and funny at the same time that I had so many different things going on. I mean, I had a thyroid that was completely out of whack, but my tests were all normal. And for years I lived living like a person with low thyroid, but there was nothing technically wrong with me from a medical front. And so, you know, there it was, just
right.
live like that. As opposed to in functional medicine, I say, I believe you. You know, it's not like, oh, well, your tests are normal, it must be like in your head, here's an antidepressant, because that's the most common thing that happens in medicine, right? I don't know what's wrong with you, it must be in your head, here's an antidepressant, as opposed to, I believe you. I say to patients all the time, you live in your body, you've been in that body your whole life. So if you tell me you're reacting badly, or this is not working, or, you know, something's wrong, I believe you.
Yeah, and there's a lot different opportunities that you have over the, you know, sort of an advantage because because of the type of framework you're in, allows you to really relate to your patients and spend time with them. So that's fabulous. And I'm really, really fortunate that I have my own, you know, just a phenomenal doctor. And there's certainly some really incredible doctors out there, and your background led you to this. So one of the things that I've been really enjoying is, like I said before, is all of the podcasts that you've been doing. And you talked about supplementing. So I just want to kind of preface this by, we're recording this in April 2020, when we're right in the middle of this COVID virus outbreak. And so one of the things that you talked about was supplements. And I'd love for you to talk about supplements, but I also want you to talk about what you had mentioned about supplementing our lives with positive things. I think that to me was just absolute magic, and it was just like this big light bulb went off as when we talk about supplements. Let's talk about that too. That was really cool.
You know, and I did that just without even thinking, really. It was sort of a, you know, if you look at everything that's going around right now, everyone wants to talk to you about, I don't know, you know what's out in social media right now. I mean, everybody's saying the same thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're listening to Dr. Mark Hyman or Dr. Daniel Heyman or whatever, you know, and everybody's like, have your greens, drink your smoothies, and, you know, lower your stress and eat well and exercise and yeah. And then it's about supplements, right? Like everyone wants to know from me, so Dr. Iyer, because you use a lot of supplements, what do you think we should take? And the first thing I say is supplement your life with positive things, because again, your mind is so much more important than anything else. and that's not to disregard. I mean, I personally don't think anyone living in North America should not take supplements. I do not believe that food can give your body everything it needs to function optimally. And I'm closer to 50 than 20, and yet I function so much higher. Yeah, can you see the wisdom highlights there? But jokes aside, I function better in my late 40s than I ever did in my 20s, and I can hike up mountains in minus 12 degrees and carry 40 pounds on my back, and I can wake up at 5:20 and work a full day and present a workshop in the evening. And this is not saying I'm sacrificing sleep or anything. I function quite well. And I don't think that's possible with food alone. So yes, nutritional supplements always, but to go back to the point why I brought up that whole supplementing your mind is that if you have high stress and you have negative thoughts and you're a pessimist instead of an optimist, we know, I mean, the science is clear that people who are miserable and unhappy and negative and complain, they do not have good health outcomes. They have more sickness and disease. And so if that's the case, then throwing supplements at them is the lowest priority in my books, because when I teach patients about depletions, do I have a couple of minutes to just teach you why I think okay. So every time your body works, a cell works, you have a thought, you breathe, you think, you do something, some process, you grow a hair strand, your body is using nutrients at all times. Now, if you eat food that's rich with pesticides and herbicides and toxins and pollutants, your body uses more nutrients to try and deal with those things. Then if you have stress, your body needs to use all the nutrients it needs to create the stress chemicals to manage your stress response. So can you see how you are constantly getting depleted? And it's about repleting to keep your system working optimally. But how am I ever going to replete patients when the stress response and that whole point I'm making about mindset and our stress, if you're under constant stress, you're constantly using up nutrients and you're depleting faster than I can replete. So you can take all the supplements you want to try and almost stay where you're at, but to be better, you need to stop the draining. You need to stop the depletions so that repletion can make a good difference and make you way better than keep you the same.
Wow,
I know it's hard.
I've never heard it described that way before. That's fabulous. Yes.
Okay, just I wish I had like a chalkboard and I could just draw it. It's hard when I'm trying to speak it to illustrate something, right? And so that's why I always start with mind. In our clinic, I look at ACE scores, the adverse childhood event scores. I spend a lot of time talking to patients about their past and their way of dealing with stress and what's happening currently and how are they doing, because that tells me how much depletion is added to the already ever-present depletions that we're going through. Soil is depleted, food is less nutrient dense, we've constantly exposed to toxins and chemicals and pesticides and herbicides. We don't always eat good quality food, but even the good quality food doesn't have everything it used to have 50 years ago. So then you add this constant stress burden. And I just want to make a point, everybody, especially because all of us who are self-employed are really in the most precarious situation. We can't get EI in this pandemic. The resources available to us, I'm sure just like you, Melanie, and everyone who's listening, we're in a different situation as opposed to the person who draws a salary, can work from home depending on their job, or they get EI, which is a pretty good amount compared to what they usually might live on, and know they're not driving to work every day, and a lot of the expenses have gone down so they can live on that. And so people say to me, my goodness, how are you coping with all of this? And are you okay? And I'm like, I'm just fine. And then I tease it's the medical marijuana plus the meditation that helps me be just fine. I've never been high a day in my life, but we can talk about medical marijuana in a moment. I think it's amazing. But why am I just fine? I honestly believe because a few days before this pandemic hit, and please don't think that I'm trying to say I'm better than anyone else. I have been working in this field a long time, and my own personal work has really come to fruition in the last year even. And then I've been doing this 16 years now, and yet I'm saying it's only in the last year I've really advanced in my own inner personal you know how it is. You can read it, you can learn it, but the practice and the practice and the practice, and then eventually it kicks in, right? It's not like, oh, I read about letting it go today, so by tomorrow I've let it all go. It doesn't work like that, right? So for me, right before all of this hit, and I could see what was happening in our business, and I could see what was starting to come. Bank of Canada dropped its rate 2 days before the pandemic was announced. That Monday in our clinic, we had, I quantified it numerically, and it was staggering the number of cancellations we received. And I said to my husband, who's also my business partner, and I said, we really need to make some decisions here. Like, we need to think if it goes this way or if it goes that way, what do we do? And it was so freeing to make a decision and say, you know what, if this happens, ABC. If that happens, XYZ. And either way, we still have each other. We still have our family. We still have everything that we need. We may have nothing else left, but you know what? We have everything that we need. And that decision was completely liberating, because then I didn't have any stress or worry, because there's no way any of us can predict what's going to happen. And so that brings you to living in the present, mindfulness, right? That practice of being here today and saying, okay, today, this is what's happening. And when I do that, I need less supplements. I'm draining my reserves less quickly, right? And so I just brought that up as a reminder to everyone. None of this is because of something in our circumstance. In the conversation we had, this hasn't got anything to do with something I did or didn't do. This is not something I just overlooked and, oh, by the way, look where we are. So that's the first thing. I have no control. But I'm not helpless in that I can accept I have no control, and so I can observe now, and there's power in observing and then reacting, rather than creating all this stuff in my head about the what ifs and oh my God and blah, 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 and get all frantic. And all it serves is to deplete me emotionally, physically, biochemically, spiritually, all of those things. And so for me, that was that. And then that podcast that you're talking about, it was right on the heels of coming through all of these conversations and discussions and self-reflection. And I thought, you know what? Yes, we can all take supplements, but if we don't supplement our lives with positive thoughts, positive actions, being helpful if we can, enjoying the moments that we have and enjoying what we do have instead of worrying about what we don't have. And when you supplement your life with those things, you're draining yourself less. Right? Then you can take supplements, and of course the supplements for your stress response are, my favorites are, really good bioavailable B complex, some magnesium. Those two are the big ones. And then I use a lot of herbal adaptogens based on people's cortisol and whether it's on the high side or the low side. Chinese medicine. Right now, in this cup, it might look like coffee, but it's actually a mushroom blend that's not very beautiful in taste, but looks like coffee. So Chinese mushrooms, Chinese herbs, meditation, mindfulness.
Right.
And then, so for the stress, and there's a lot of other ones. I could say, yes, you must take a multivitamin, and yes, you must take vitamin C, and yes, the list could be an arm's length worth of a list, but I just gave you some of the big ones that I think if you're going to take something, then take those and manage the stress response. And more important than that is supplement your sleep with good quality sleep and good sleep habits. right? Because when you sleep well, you do better overall.
So speaking of the quality piece, so can you touch on just for a minute about the quality of supplements, because that makes a difference as well in that bioavailability that you were talking about, right? So if we take some, here's some sort of here's some supplements that help during a stressful, period, or just daily life, really. And then that other piece of supplementing, and there's so many free things online available in how to meditate and we can all get out and move, or we can move in our own homes. So that piece, but just can you touch on the quality of supplements, because I think that makes a big difference too, doesn't it?
I'll start with a story, and thank you. So a story, well, maybe two stories, but here's a story. It might have been about 5 years ago. The New York Attorney General shut down Walgreens and Walmart and a bunch of GNC, excuse me, the article is online, so you can find it. But it was a whole host of stores that are very well known. And they were shut down and stopped from carrying and distributing supplements because when they tested the supplements, they were contaminated with dust, plant material, and other things that weren't on the label.
Wow.
I'm waiting for you to be shocked. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because the nutraceutical industry is so poorly regulated, and they don't have the same restrictions as a pharmaceutical company would have. So when we're producing medicine, we, as if I make medicine, but when we're producing medicines, there's very strict regulations about how it's processed and manufactured, the quality of the facility, the machinery, the testing that's done, the ingredients that are used, and those sorts of things. So in the nutraceutical industry, there's no such thing. So you could have from an average batch, let's say it was supposed to have 10 milligrams of something in it, and you could produce it. So it might be like cooking your vitamins or cooking your food. What comes out is not necessarily what went in, right? Some things would be enhanced and some things might be completely destroyed by cooking.
Right.
So you might go out and buy supplement A, and today you'll get 10 milligrams, and then next month you buy it from a different batch and it might have 7 or 6 milligrams. Another month you might have 11. There's no way for you to actually know what you're going to get. And then you have to consider all the additives and fillers and things that they add, like dyes and preservatives and things like that. So I'm very particular about it. And so knowing that that happened in fairly recent history, what happened even more recently, probably within the last 6 months or so, Amazon did a recall on millions and millions of dollars worth of product because people selling online were selling whatever they wanted, right? And so they were finding that supplements weren't of a high quality, and some of them were contaminated, and some of them were actually downright dangerous. And so they did this huge recall. So that's the two stories I wanted to share with you. Then I want to talk about sourcing raw material. You have A grade, B grade, C grade, and D grade. So your companies like GNC and I shouldn't pick on people's names, but there are a lot of companies where, and it's not just pricing. I'm not saying it's because it's cheap. Yes, but lower quality is definitely cheaper. It's like buying a t-shirt for $4.99, putting it through the wash twice, and then it's ripped. As opposed to buying a $20 t-shirt and 8, 9, 10 years later, it's still looking good, right? There's a difference, and you get what you pay for. Especially when it comes to food and supplements, you get what you pay for. Right. I don't understand why people would think that they should save $10 on a bottle of supplements, yet that same person's buying a Starbucks at I don't even know how much a Starbucks costs, probably like, I don't know, $5, $7, $8, I would imagine. Right. And you're blowing that on one drink that's not even good for you, but you're fussing to pay that much more for a bottle of supplements that would last you a whole month.
Right. Yeah. And
right?
I think it is exactly this. It's about the education component, because we don't know. We just don't know.
Here's a good example. At one point, we could test vitamin D levels on blood freely through the laboratory. And I had this patient who would take a pile of different supplements, but he would buy Jameson and Kirkland and Safeway brand and this and that, and just always on the lowest price he could find. And let me say that this is a person who drove an electric hybrid vehicle. So let's say that for sure he could afford to spend more. Right? Or should I say invest more in his health?
That's a good way to put it too, yes.
So so he insisted on taking this type of D delta, because I want to talk about vitamin delta D later. And I couldn't detect it in his blood. He had no blood level to show he was taking it. And I said, "Are you sure you've been taking it?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I didn't even forget it the day before. I said, "No, it's a fat soluble vitamin, so it's not going to lose, it's not like I won't find it in your blood if you forgot a dose for the week." And he says, "No, I'm taking it." I said, "All right, well, you know what? There's a company from the US. We bring in stuff from them because I have been to their facility. I'm absolutely shocked and blown away by how they make their vitamins. I think you should try this. And by the way, it's probably way cheaper than what you're taking, because this costs you just over a penny per drop. And one drop is equal to one tablet of what you're taking." And he says, "No, I'm not taking a tablet. I'm taking oil as well." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Anyway, he switched products. And then we tested him 6 weeks later, and I could find it in his blood. So what would be the point of say you can buy vitamin delta for $15, and yet I can't find it in your blood, but you can take vitamin delta from a reputable company that makes pharmaceutical grade products, and you pay $7 more, but it lasts you 3 times longer, and it's more bioavailable, and it's actually doing what it was supposed to do.
Great. So that really makes the case for the quality and the investment, for sure.
That's right. And so, some people say, "Well, I can't afford a whole bunch." Okay, then take a few of the most important ones, but get the right quality. Then take a whole pile of low quality ones that really do. So for example, some of the companies that we deal with right now, there's 2 of them that have products that are back ordered. As much as we hate back ordering, the reason is they cannot get the quality of ingredient to produce and so they just won't produce. So from the organic nature, from the potency, from all of that, they need to know. And so they know which farming sources, they know all of those things. And if they can't get it, they will not produce a product. They're not going to go to a C grade and a D grade raw material just to produce something to sell. They're going to say no. And so I can tell you right now, we're waiting for one product to be available. And I love that about them. I hate that we can't have it, but I love that they have the ethics to say, I can't produce the quality that I'm used to producing, and so I'm just not going to make it. As opposed to moving into a lower grade, lower potency, lower bioavailability, meaning it's like the gentleman I just told you about, right? So he's taking a poorly bioavailable substance. I'm not saying that there's no vitamin D. I mean, there might be no vitamin D in it, or very little in it, but bioavailability means he's taking it and it's not getting into his body, so it's not going to do the work. Whereas a highly bioavailable substance, you can take it and you'll find it in the blood very quickly.
Right. So those products you carry as well. And what are the brands that you prefer then, that you've done, because you've done your research on these? And that's what I love about going to an expert myself, is they've done the research.
I actually went to the facility, and you'll be blown away. We had to garb up you've seen pictures of people in PPE right now for COVID. Yeah. We pretty much looked like that 12, 13 years ago when I went to the facility. It was mind blowing. I had to stand there and get garbed up. My hair was covered. I had a face mask on. They covered up my feet. It was like going to the operating room, to be honest with you. That's how I felt. And then you walk in, and there's these pallets and like mountain high, in a huge storage area, of raw materials, and they actually quarantine the raw material for 3 weeks.
Wow.
To ensure that they're not contaminated with anything. They get them third-party tested. They get them looked at for, whether it's some kind of bug on it or whatever might have made it in there. And after that, they release it into the facility. And once you're in the facility, it is absolutely incredible. They have these robotic arms that come in and grab random bottles off the production line so that they can test it at different phases and make sure they understand the potency. And then they'll test it at the end of production as well. So, they do these random sampling to make sure that everything's done. And then they have these rooms with, and they had these, well, it was little Post-its. So kind of, I was like, what is that? And there's a Post-it with a temperature on it, and so it's so many degrees and so much humidity and so many degrees and so much humidity. And then they had fridges and then bottles just outside the fridges. And basically what they were doing was seeing if you travel, say, from Calgary to Florida, is your supplement still going to be as effective once it gets to a different temperature and different humidity? Because it might be just fine here, but it might not be fine over there. So they were looking at also the life of it after the bottle is open. So almost all products are labeled with an expiry date, etc., based on it being sealed.
Right. Gotcha.
But they wanted to know, once it's open and now air's getting to it and all of these other things, temperature changes, humidity, is it still active? Is it still bioavailable? Does it still work? And that's what convinced me to work with them in particular. And there's a few other companies that I trust as much, for different other things. And, I just think that people need to know this. Yeah. And I just had someone say to me, oh, my family doctor is so amazing. I'd love to support your business. However, my family doctor really wants to know what I'm taking. So he recommends what he thinks. And that's great if he's done that kind of research. Right. I just don't know how many family doctors dedicate their life to nutrition and nutraceuticals and functional medicine per se, but all the power to someone who can do that much, as opposed to when I was a family doctor. Really well done on that doctor. For me, when I was a family doctor, I'd go, you don't need to take vitamins. If you needed to take vitamins, I'd have learned about it in med school. I have 2 degrees, come on. Yeah. So look how now who's embarrassed at saying that, right? Because look what I say today. Yes, take your vitamins before you take a medicine. Well, some medicines are essential, and I still write prescriptions. I'm not anti-medicine. Yeah. I am absolutely anti-unnecessary medicine. Like if you take a proton pump inhibitor, for example, that is one of my pet peeves of all time. Okay, I have many, but this one's high on the list, right? Because there are so many people who have heartburn and indigestion. And so they go to the doctor, and what do they get? They get a proton pump inhibitor, which is not Zantac, Pantaloc and Nexium, the purple pill that's advertised on TV and all of that. Well, when you change your stomach acid is there for a reason. Right? It's to sterilize the gut. It's to break down protein. It's to stop bacteria from overgrowing in the small bowel. Your small bowel is exactly where nutrients get absorbed. So if stomach acid breaks down protein and it keeps your gut sterile, why are we stopping you from producing stomach acid with a proton pump inhibitor, right? Because it was necessary to begin with. That's why we got born with it. But now we're stopping it to take away the symptom. But what if we said, what is the cause? And you'd be surprised that sometimes you can actually have heartburn from low stomach acid. You'd be very surprised to know that a lot of people who have heartburn actually have food sensitivities. My husband is a perfect case in point. Since we met, honestly, I used to have Tums everywhere. In every coat pocket, every drawer in the house, car door, every vehicle, multiple spots in the vehicle, because when he got that heartburn, he needed to treat it right away. And our youngest is 12 now, and when he was little, we had some significant health challenges. Yet another reason I got into functional medicine, because his doctor said there was nothing wrong with him, yet at age 18 months, the child had not met any of his developmental milestones. I don't know if you have kids, but as a mother, when your child's not meeting their milestones, that's really concerning. And you would know that, especially because this was my second child, never mind that I'd done pediatrics post-grad outside of med school as well. So here I have a doctor dismissing me and saying, there's nothing wrong with your child. And I'm like, he's not even able to sit. So off to a functional medicine convention I went, off to train in how to heal a child with neurological and autistic spectrum disorder issues. And we have, I would say, cured him through a functional medicine protocol. And so when we started doing the protocol for Kaylin, I just, some months went by and I found a roll of Tums, and the top was like decaying. It was like ugly looking. And you'd never see that in my house because this man used to suck back Tums like anything, right? So I'm like, what is this? So I said to him, when last have you taken Tums? And he thought, oh yeah, it's been a while. I haven't needed that in a long. He didn't even notice his heartburn was gone.
Wow.
But we had changed our diet for our son. Okay. And the entire house did it. And that's when we realized his heartburn was gone. And now, of course, as I've studied functional medicine and trained in it, and I do it every day, of course, I know this now. But that was such a big deal back then because I didn't know such a thing was possible. Right. And yes, he became our barometer. If we went out and we wanted to know if there was dairy in something, he would get the first little taste. And if he got heartburn, because it would be instant, then we knew the kids couldn't eat it. That's right? Amazing. Or if they pulled off the croutons from a salad or something and gave it to him without giving him a freshly made one, he would know because his heartburn would come back. And so that's how sensitive his gut was to those two things.
Right. So again, we just really need to educate ourselves and take the opportunity to educate ourselves on all aspects of this. So just before we finish up, do you have anything that you want to add? Like as far as again, right now we're in the middle of a crisis. So maybe just recap real quick, just the supplements that you'd recommend, just for that, the nutritional supplements that you'd recommend.
If you have stress and you're busy, I always recommend a B complex. About half the population don't methylate adequately, and I could talk to you for hours on what that means, but it's probably best to stick with a methylated B complex and then magnesium, neither of which can cause you harm. So as a physician, I have to be careful of what advice I give patients. So for example, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin and you should get your levels checked. Vitamin D is critical for immune system health, but in too high doses, not only can you get calcifications, but you can actually increase coronary artery disease. Wow. So it's really important to get your levels checked. And I think if there's anyone watching that wants to get it checked, because we can't do it on healthcare anymore. So I have a website called newrulesforbetterliving.com. So newrulesforbetterliving.com. That will get you an email series that I created. Oh, great. But what it will do is it'll put you into my database. You can always unsubscribe, but then you will have all of our contact information. Our clinic website is a little bit awkward because it's got the number 4 in it. It's betterforlife.ca. So it's kind of hard to communicate that. So newrulesforbetterliving.com. Register there, get the e-series, and then you can ask questions like, how do I order a vitamin D test, and we'll ship you one, and then I'll interpret it for you and guide you on your dosing, for example. And we have clients all over the world, Melanie. I'm sure you do too. So I have patients in the US, in Peru, in Australia, New Zealand area. So we do have the capacity to treat and coach patients all over the world. So B's, magnesium, C as an antioxidant. The thing to remember is that there's no one antioxidant that you need. it's like a football team. You know, you have multiple positions
Right.
on the team. So think of your antioxidants as a football team. So just because you take vitamin C doesn't mean you don't need anthocyanins from your berries and your you know, whatever, your green tea and whatever. So CoQ10 is another antioxidant too, and we use it for different reasons. But magnesium, B, vitamin C. If you're thinking immune system, vitamin A. Now, vitamin A and zinc are something I measure blood levels for.
Right.
So again, vitamin A being fat soluble means you can get toxic levels of it, as opposed to magnesium or vitamin B, which you will pee out and you won't get toxic from, right? So therein lies the little thing. Yet, you know, any random person can go read a book on vitamins and dish out all sorts of advice online and be perfectly fine. Just as a physician, I have to always qualify everything because people think I'm giving them medical advice. So we should give the disclaimer here. This information is for information purposes only, not to treat any medical conditions you may have. And please consult your doctor before you follow any advice you may get from him.
Yeah.
See, I've had to say that more than
that.
once before.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yes.
that a lot.
So then there's the herbals, you know, the mushroom extracts, and I really don't mind mushroom coffees, or, I mean, not the coffees. Like I have just, it's pretty, it falls on the bitter side. So I guess you could sweeten it, but this is just crushed up mushroom.
Yeah, reishi, chaga,
Yes,
lion's
all of those
mane.
things. Yes,
Yes.
and into a powder, and then
Yes.
I just add hot water and drink it. I've learned to drink it and like the taste, but you know, you could do whatever you want with it. So natural things like that, starting your day with some green tea, that would give you some antioxidants and some, you know, and coffee by itself is not a bad thing. It's when you drink too much of it that it becomes bad, right? So you've got antioxidants there. You know, eat good quality food. Try for locally sourced first. It sounds like a buzzword, but you know, the biggest reason you want to eat local, other than being able to ask the farmer, what did you put on it, is that it hasn't had that much time between harvest and your plate.
Right.
You know, when it's coming from countries so far away, and most of us have never even been to those countries, you know, what's happening along is that you know that there's a decay of nutrient density the longer away from harvest. And then think that half of our food is harvested green and sprayed with chemicals to hasten ripening and change the color and make it look beautiful, you know, as opposed to something local. You pick it up from the farmer, and I've done that. I've said, so how do you grow it, and what do you fertilize it with, and what nutrients are you using, right, for your plants, and how is this done? And same thing for meat. If you can, support local.
Right. Right.
So get your nutrients from food, and then top up with most of my favorites. We, you know, just a little bit of self-promotion for our clinic, which is currently
please.
closed.
I was going to ask you about that too.
We do have we have an online shopping cart, and we have all of our vitamins listed there. I would suggest that you pop us a note with a little bit of your background and what you're trying to treat, so that I could give you a little bit of advice and make sure you stay safe. Maybe you'll want to let people know about our metabolic overhaul group, because you're liking it, so maybe they will too.
Yes. Yeah. So where do we find you there? Because that is a great page.
So it's called Metabolic Overhaul on Facebook. And it is a private group, so you just have to ask for to join. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. My mushrooms aren't working as well as a cup of coffee might have.
Well, I'm sure you've been up since the wee hours, and again going like a mad fiend right now, and always really. So
if we can just spend a couple minutes on your client base watching, what do you think would be the most valuable information we could give? Like, what do you think I should address for them to cope with or feel better or do better through this pandemic and unprecedented chaos we're dealing with?
I think you really covered a lot of it that we were looking for, because really talking about whole health and talking about looking at your overall what's happening in your life. And again, this is like everyday daily life, so that we can, like you talked about at the beginning, cope with crazy out of control things. And this is really unprecedented, but a lot of things happen to us. So, and then it's like, okay, what do we do? So I think that gives us a good platform for thinking about, all right, so what might be next? So we're through sort of the beginning of this. There's a lot of government programs that have become available. So really knowing that, getting in touch with that, staying on top of it.
And knowing you're not alone, that you're not the
Yes,
only person going through this. You know, it's different from having a failing business or getting fired or laid off from your
right,
job, where you might be the only person or one of 20 people, but everybody else is carrying along. Life is just
right.
fine. As opposed to here, you go, I'm not the only one. We're all in this together and we'll all make it through together. And there's something to be, that's why I created that community, because
Yeah,
there's something to be said about community. And I have a large following. I have like over 3,000 people on my personal Facebook, but we're not all like-minded. So I decided to move people into a private group where you can feel safe to share. You can feel safe to say, I'm struggling with this. You know, and you've noticed every day I ask questions, how are you doing with
yeah,
this? Or how are you doing with that? Because I don't always want to tell people what to do. I want to invite them to think about what else can they be doing. And so, yeah, I'd love to have more people join us on the group
great.
if you think that's a good idea. And I'm
Yeah.
very grateful for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And hopefully it comes across as wisdom.
For sure. Well, I like your approach because you share your personal experiences, where you're coming from, and and gave us some really great tips today. So I really appreciate your time so much, and we'll continue following you. And I really encourage people to come on and follow you and ask questions because you're so engaging.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. And just that website one more time, just so we know how, or where we can connect with you.
Newrulesforbetterliving.com
Fabulous.
or Metabolic Overhaul on Facebook.
On Facebook. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Take care. I
Thanks
hope
so
everything
much.
goes well with the kiddos and the family and the dogs and everybody at home all at the same time.
I think it's so joyful. I
Aw,
could complain that, well, I'm self-employed, right? And if I have no work, I'm at home, with the kids. But it's so lovely to be able to say, hey, kids, let's have lunch together and let's cook this. And last night my son made dessert and it's just lovely. So, there's blessings in everything. And
yeah,
so as a final exit
yeah.
point, because I can talk so much, is let's find the blessings and the joy in everything that's happening right now, because there really is blessings and joy in everything.
Mhm. Yes, there is. Thank you. That's a perfect way to finish up. And take care. We'll talk to you
Thanks
soon.
so much. Bye.